Today, we've got two affordable 5G smartphones from Samsung, the Galaxy A16 5G and the Samsung Galaxy A25 5G. The big question, which should you get or which offers more value for your money? Let me help you find out, and so without taking much of your time, yo guys, let's get started. Both smartphones come out of the box with their USB cables, SIM ejectors and user guide. That's it, no chargers. Over to the design and build quality, both of the smartphones share that familiar Samsung look, a glass front with a plastic back and frame, which is pretty good for durability in this price range, and also the tried and true flagship-like design, which is maintained on all Samsung devices at this point. Aside the sizes, you might not be able to tell these devices apart at a quick glance. Now, when it comes to dimensions and also weight, the Galaxy A16 5G is slightly bulkier, at 200 grams versus the A25's 197 grams. That's not a huge difference. But for those who prefer a slightly more compact feel, like myself, the Galaxy A25 does have that edge. Plus, it's a smidge thicker, coming in at 8.3mm compared to the 7.9mm on the Galaxy A16. Oh, one thing to note in design, if you're a fan of minimal bezels, then the Galaxy A16 5G looks a bit more modern, thanks to a smaller bezel around the screen. So if design aesthetics are a big deal for you, then the A16 might catch your eye a bit more. But the Galaxy A25 wins for feel and compactness. Both have dual SIM trays, which are hybrid types, and the side-mounted fingerprint scanners for security. As far as being water resistant, there is no IP rating for the Galaxy A25, but you have IP54 on the Galaxy A16 5G. Of course, that's a plus. Now, audio lovers, listen up. The Galaxy A25 5G takes the crown here thanks to the stereo speakers, and it still retains the beloved 3.5mm jack port. The sound is louder and richer at max volume on the Galaxy A25 compared to the A16, which only has a single downfiring speaker. The display is where things get interesting. Both devices have stunning Super AMOLED panels, and Samsung doesn't disappoint when it comes to the displays. The A16 5G rocks a 6.7-inch screen with a 90Hz refresh rate, which is super smooth and more than enough for most daily tasks. It also hits a decent 800 nits of peak brightness. On the other hand, the Galaxy A25 5G shrinks slightly with a 6.5-inch display. But don't let that size fool you, because it steps it up with a 120Hz refresh rate, and that's going to give you even smoother scrolling, plus it cranks up the brightness to 1000 nits. So outdoor visibility on the A25 is absolutely on point and better. You get the same 1080 by 2340 resolution on both devices, nothing much. But here's the thing, I personally preferred the color tuning on the A16's display. It had a little bit more pop, while the A25 felt less saturated. So it comes down to whether you want smoothness and brightness on the A25, or if you care more about the slightly better color representation on the A16, bigger display and then the slightly thinner bezels. When it comes to performance, the A16 5G is powered by either the Exynos 1330 or the Dimensity 6300, depending on your region, while the A25 runs on the Exynos 1280. Okay, so you might think the newer A16 with the more advanced chipset has the edge, but fun fact, performance-wise, these two are pretty close. Both boards feature octa-core processors that balance efficiency and power, though with the 120Hz display, the A25 might feel a little snappier, especially if you constantly switch between applications and games. Now, I didn't really notice a huge difference between these devices in terms of day-to-day use, but on paper, or as far as benchmark scores, there was a significant difference. Now, I would love to point out that I used the 4GB variant on the A16 and the 6GB RAM variant on the A25 for this test, if that helps. Benchmarks are not everything, by the way. Both feature Android 14, but the A16 gets 6 major updates versus the A25's 4 years of updates. So long-term users might favor the A16. Alright, quick break here. Imagine this, you're scrolling smoothly on the Galaxy A25 and whoops, your finger lands on the like button. Fate, right? And while you're there, hit the subscribe button too, alongside the bell icon to stay notified when we make more videos like this one. That helps us a bunch. Thank you. Alright, let's dive into the camera setup, because this is where the differences between these smartphones start to stand out. First off, both have 50MP main sensors and 30MP selfie cameras. So I snapped a photo of this gamepad indoors, and surprisingly, the A16 gave a more accurate white balance. And again, when I took a shot of this Rubik's Cube, the colors on the A16 looked more true to life. But that's where the A16's little victory kinda ends. When we step up to more complex lighting, the Galaxy A25 takes the cake and maybe the whole bakery. You get a better dynamic range, better color management, and a better smartphone camera for photos overall. For selfies, the A25 does a couple of things better. You get more detail, and by that I mean it's not trying to smooth out every pore on your face and make you look like a wax figure, which seems like what the A15 is trying to do. In portrait mode, the Galaxy A25 is just cleaner. Like when it comes to background blur comparison, it separates the subject from the background so much better. Now let's zoom out to the ultra wide cameras. 8 megapixels on the A25 and 5 megapixels for the A15. The A25 manages to balance the exposure inside and outside really well. It just doesn't blow out the highlights, while the A16 struggles a bit here, making things look either too bright or too dark in one part of the photo. The A25 in dynamic range is impressive, especially when you're trying to capture detail in a more complicated lighting situation. So, for all you group shots at the beach people, the A25 is the better call. Now I noticed something pretty cool with the regular lens on both devices, basically the main cameras that everyone uses the most. The A25 has a bit more contrast in its shots, which for me just makes the pictures pop a little more. And here's something I didn't expect. The Galaxy A25's warmer tone gives your skin tones this smooth glow, looking more natural, while the A16 tends to give this slightly red tint that doesn't always do your complexion any favors. Let's move over to the zoom performance. If you're the type to zoom in on stuff, the A25 is clearly better as it uses the main sensor, no dedicated telephoto lens on them. And then there's this low light photography. The A25's low light photos capture way more detail than the A16's and handle better exposure in darker scenarios. Turning on night mode is even better for picking up extra light in those dim conditions. Now the A16 can still work in a pinch, but it can't match the A25 after the sun goes down. For video, you're gonna like the A25 5G better. It shoots 4K while the A16 taps out at 1080p. A pretty huge difference. But what takes it up a notch for me is the video stabilization on the A25. I shot some footage walking around, and hands down the A25 at 1080p was way smoother. Plus the color consistency in video, just like the photos, is better on the Galaxy A25. Bottom line, if you're into photography or videography, the Galaxy A25 5G is clearly the stronger camera here. Both smartphones have a 5000 mAh battery with 25 watts fast charging, so battery life is going to be pretty much the same on these devices. Both will easily last you through a full day of use, and charging speeds are basically identical on these smartphones. Right now, the Galaxy A16 should be available for about 270,000 naira or $160, while the Galaxy A25 is around $250 or 422,500 naira here in Nigeria. Alright, so between the Galaxy A16 5G and the Galaxy A25 5G, how do they stack up? If you care more about design, a pop-up display, and a future-proofed software experience, then the Galaxy A16 5G is the strong choice. But the Galaxy A25 5G is my top pick for better camera performance, smoother display, and superior audio. At the end of the day, it's just a more capable device, and that's for only a bit more money. It punches way above its price class, especially considering the 4K recording and the stereo speakers on the A25. So my take, if you can stretch that budget, I'll say go with the Galaxy A25 5G. You can check out this video here. YouTube thinks you love it. Catch you in the next one. Koyi that day.